Let's get right to it. The battle for New York heating up in a big way, with about 10 days until voters head to the polls. And while Donald Trump is still decidedly in the lead, he's starting to hit some roadblocks. And that's according to the latest Associated Press GFK poll. Nearly 7 in 10 Americans hold an unfavorable view of the GOP frontrunner. The AP calls that unprecedented unpopularity among every race, gender, and political viewpoint. This, as Trump has just shaken up his campaign staff. He also seems to be adopting a new game plan, canceling a California trip to spend the next several days aggressively campaigning in New York ahead of the April 19th primary. Well, in the meantime, Ted Cruz is still defending his New York values comments. Here's the Texas senator speaking to Bill O'Reilly.
I think people across New York and across the country knew exactly what New York values means, and those are the values of liberal Democratic politicians who have been hammering this state. You know, I've been campaigning across New York, and people are stopping me literally every day and say, I know exactly what you meant, and I'm fed up with what these liberal Democrats are doing to us, the people of New York. They're the ones suffering for it, and as you noted, Donald Trump has been funding it year after year after year.
Well, the Cruz campaign also working furiously behind the scenes to stay close to Trump in the Empire State and beyond in the all-important delegate fight. All right, so let's shift to the Empire State, Antonio.
Yes,
Cruz's goal is to keep Donald Trump below 50%. Right now he's polling very well, but this is a natural fit for him. This is his home state, and Ted Cruz is struggling. You saw him get booed out of the Bronx.
Yeah.
They don't really seem to like him here, but his New York values comment didn't exactly help with that warm welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Cruz wouldn't be into the fight if it wasn't for Trump at this point. I think if Trump wasn't in the race at all, I think you wouldn't see Cruz. I think it'd be maybe a Rubio at this point. But I think Trump will win New York, and he will win California, and then we'll see in June what happens after that. It's tough for Trump because, I mean, his party doesn't want him, the Democrats don't want him, but the people want him. So at the end of the day, the people will vote, and I will vote for Trump, and I'm behind him 100%, and I hope that we'll see him in the fall.
You mentioned yesterday, Antonio, that you do believe that he will win California.
Yes.
You just said it now. Why do you think he's doing so well in a state like California? And do you think that it matters that he foregoed going out to the Sunshine, or that's Florida actually, going out to California, instead opting to stay in New York?
Well, it's tough times. I think we need somebody who's just honest. He might not be perfect, and nobody is, about stuff that he talks about, but at the end of the day, he's honest. And I think I cannot trust Cruz. There's something about him, and definitely I don't trust Hillary or anybody on that side, but I trust Trump. I think at the end of the day, he wants what's best for the country. He cares for the country. He's a true patriot, and I believe everything he says.
You know, Harris, it's hard to reconcile because you get these polls and you read these polls and they say, oh, he's so unpopular. 7 out of 10 people don't like him. And I think you look around and you go, well, then who's voting for him? How is he the front runner? How is he doing so well in blue states?
I can tell you this one thing about polls from what Donald Trump has said. He only looks at the ones that he likes. We're doing one. Yeah. So, I mean, that might be something that people want to do, too. I mean, what is his perspective on this? Because that's really what informs what he's going to do next. I don't know that the bad polling or the polls that aren't in his favor necessarily motivate him as much as the ones that say, yeah, you're doing the right thing. I want to talk to you a little bit, though, about the mood in Hollywood. I'm seeing kind of a shift. You've got Scott Baio, Susan Sarandon, not necessarily people, particularly with Susan Sarandon, that you would see coming forth and saying, you know, you might give a guy like a Donald Trump a look. I don't know how she's voted over the years, but Hollywood generally is not very warm and fuzzy to conservatives and outright Republicans when they say so. Are things changing, and is Trump part of that change?
I think they're changing all over the world. I think this country is changing. It's been changing for the last 7 and some years. I think people are fed up. Like I said, I think they care about security. They want this country. I think most of them want the country to go back to where it used to be. A true American, you know, it's a unique place, United States. And I think it needs to go back to that, and I think they want it back. And I think they can only get that back if Trump is elected.
But I think that you're touching on something that Trump supporters need to focus on, and that is winning over conservatives who are not on board with his campaign. Because with some of these supporters, anything short of like pure exultation and adulation, and you're greeted with fury and insults from these supporters, because if you don't get it, I'm not going to explain it to you. And there's a blindness among some of his most loyal supporters that feels like Hillary Clinton's supporters, where they don't acknowledge his shortcomings. And they need to convince people, convince conservatives. He needs almost 70% of these unbound delegates to get to 1237. They've got to get them on board, and soon.
So Dagan, stay on that point then. If it's, let's say, not Donald Trump, then you could argue the inverse when it comes to Ted Cruz. How do you then get the Trump supporters who are going to feel that they have been, denied their voice? And I guess you could say the same thing on the left, too. I mean, you have this fight between Hillary and Bernie. So if one or the other doesn't get it, both sides have some work to do to coalesce their parties.
They both do. And I think that the bigger concern is with Cruz, and I think Kasich's your wild card here, right? That if you could,
Kasich could get his party, that he's invited at the party, but he's hanging out in the back. Nobody knows who he is, but
he won't leave.
He's invited. Yeah, he's invited at the party, but he won't leave.
The danger is that the Trump supporters want him to run as a third-party candidate if he can't get the nomination.
Yeah, that's difficult to do, and I think Michael Bloomberg underscored how difficult that is to do, despite the fact that people keep talking about him running as a third-party candidate. The bureaucracy in all 50 states is set up to deny somebody a third-party run. The only way he really can run as a third party is if he gets the Libertarian Party, or some other already established party to nominate him as their nominee. I will say, look, you've got, according to this AP poll, which I know, according to Donald Trump, is not the classiest poll in the world, but look, I mean, ultimately, you have 31%, almost a third of Republican candidates saying that if he's the nominee, they will never vote for him. Now, a lot of that is obviously bluster because they want him to be the nominee, but you do have an interesting phenomenon here that you've never had before, which is a true chunk of the Republican electorate that either will never vote for him or will never vote for anybody else if he's denied the nomination, if he's got the plurality of the vote, which is why I sympathize again with Reince Priebus, the chairman of the RNC. He's got his work cut out for him.
We can talk about the Democrats in the next block, but talk a little bit, Julie, because you've worked on campaigns, especially in the Northeast. You know New York politics. Speak to Ted Cruz saying all he wants to do is deny Donald Trump over that 50% mark, because that would deny him delegates.
Well, he needs to, if Donald Trump truly, it's probably going to be brokered anyway, but to even have a hope of avoiding a brokered convention, he needs to get over 50% because that's winner take all in New York. Then he gets all the delegates. And Cruz is smart to deny him 50% because then it becomes proportional delegate allocation. The problem for Cruz is, you can't come to New York and criticize New York values. I don't care.
Well, I think he gets it now.
He gets it now. I don't care. I don't care. If you're explaining Ted Cruz, you're losing. And the reality is, he's explaining what he meant. He's losing.
When he said New York values, though, he wasn't a straight shooter. Say what you mean. Call him a heathen, a liberal, a lefty. But don't say New York values.
It's tough to get a second chance after you've had a second chance at it, right? Now he's got to have a third and a fourth to try to explain that. Real quickly, the other person with a lot of campaign experience on the couch is Andrea. So I don't want to miss an opportunity to ask something that you have mentioned before, and that is the unknown variable of the independents. So you're talking about how split it is among Republicans. I won't vote for Trump. I'll only vote for Trump. What about those independents who actually haven't come out yet or only were able to in some states that didn't have closed primaries?
They're going to be hugely important. I mean, that's where elections are won or lost. Now, you saw Barack Obama change that model because he rallied the base. But if Trump can't coalesce the base, much like a Hillary Clinton, you've got to look to the middle and you've got to rally those independents. But again, you look at the numbers with how well Trump has done and how well Sanders has done recently with independents, much better than the Clintons and much better than the Cruzes. So he would have to make a big play for that. But to do that, you've also, I think, got to adopt that general election mentality, and
his supporters need to do it too. They've got to stop being thin-skinned, and they've got to focus on getting people on board rather than
And electorally, it's easier for him to make that general election turn before a state like New York, a state like Pennsylvania, and a state like California, which isn't as conservative as, say, in Iowa.
That's true.
But he's got a little bit of work to do on that.
Well, and he makes the most difference in those states because of the delegate pool. I mean, you've got a lot of delegates.
A lot of delegates. He's got to stick to what's important, which is security and the economic part of it. And I think he's changing things around. His team is going to be changed, and I think as we speak. So. The tough times are ahead of us.
But Antonio, you raise a really good point, which is, when he was doing well, he was talking about the wall, he was talking about trade with China. Where he started doing poorly in the last few weeks is this whole abortion kerfuffle where he was on 20 sides of the same issue, the Heidi Cruz back and forth over whose wife is hotter. That's the kind of stuff that he needs to avoid talking about. If he goes back to his core economic message and his immigration message, that's
he needs to listen to Ivanka and Melania too.
He's got some policy speeches coming up. We know he's meeting with lawmakers on Capitol Hill, those who support him, to try to get some of those who don't on board. So
Republicans always stumble on those social issues. They're always trying to be that super red, ultra-conservative litmus test that you have to face in a primary to win. Seems to always trip them up. It's amazing that they don't learn the lessons to have those answers nailed down before they even start campaigning.